I've been looking at the relationship between philosophy and theology in the work of Saint Thomas Aquinas, and we are looking at this through a chapter in Father Copplestone's History of Philosophy. So it's not Thomas Aquinas we are reading directly, and we have already, I think, at least had two sessions on this, but I think I don't remember anything we did, and as far as I know, we didn't go very far, so it doesn't hurt to just go back and look at it from the start, since we had done a few lines only anyway. So Saint Thomas Aquinas made a formal and explicit distinction. So he made this distinction between theology and philosophy. So that's a fact. So, but we are interested really in on what basis he made his reasons, and see whether those reasons appeal to us as well. Now, obviously, philosophy as he understood it, so it can't be applied to all types of philosophy. The philosophy and the other human sciences rely simply and solely on the natural light of reason. That was his distinction. St. Thomas Aquinas, natural light of reason. What is natural light of reason? The philosopher uses principles which are known by human reason, with God's general concurrence, of course, but without supernatural light of faith. Now, there are two terms here. Let's stop on those. It doesn't matter if we don't progress too much. Important thing is to understand things, not to, finish things. So, but without the supernatural light of faith, natural light of reason, which is human reason, and supernatural light of faith. Okay. So there are two things here he's talking about. Natural light of reason, which is human reason. Sometimes people call it unaided human reason. Like human reason on its own. And by unaided, people mean the specific thing, unaided by revelation. Because otherwise, there's no such thing as unaided human reason. Obviously, Aquinas, as a follower of Aristotle, might have thought that, but like human reason rely on a lot of things, like as we know today. But yeah, unaided by revelation, and a specific type of revelation, because revelation which has been, directed towards the prophets and the messengers of God. Otherwise, revelation, non-prophetic or messenger-directed revelations are received by other people too, right? So how can we talk about unaided human reason? How can we be sure that Plato or Aristotle's reason wasn't aided by some sort of revelation? If not divine, some other anti-divine revelation. So these are the issues. I'm just opening up. I'm not trying to be silly, but facetious. And what is supernatural light of faith? What is supernatural light of faith? Supernatural light of faith. So that's contrasted with just the natural light of but interesting question here is for a believer like St. Thomas Aquinas and Father Copleston, for example. Believers in Abrahamic faith, however distorted, natural and supernatural are both the creation of God. The God of Abraham. So supernatural, and both are his creation. Natural light of faith and supernatural light of natural light of reason and supernatural light of faith. So in what sense this natural light of reason is not supernatural? And in what sense this supernatural light of faith is not natural? That's the question. So I don't have any answer to this at this point anyway. But what I'm saying is, when a believer, if this distinction is made by a pagan or a non-believer, maybe we'll let him go. But maybe natural light of reason and supernatural light of faith, if this distinction is made by a believer like St. Thomas Aquinas, with even Saint and Father Copleston, who is not just his father as well, is not just a believer. When they say natural light of faith and supernatural light of faith and natural light of reason, and both natural and supernatural is created by God, who is, I assume, supernatural, even supernatural, above supernatural. So in what sense supernatural is not natural and natural is not supernatural? So that's an important distinction, important question, I think, which we should keep in mind and go back to the text for now anyway. Okay, so St. Thomas made formal and explicit distinction between dogmatic theology and philosophy. It's a fact. Philosophy and the other human sciences are simply and solely based on the natural light of reason. Let's grant him for now. The philosopher uses principle, but just keep in mind the questions we raised. The philosopher uses principles which are known by the human reason with God's natural concurrence, of course. So in that sense, human reason is, in a sense, part of it is supernatural. Of course, but without the supernatural light of faith. or without revelation, I guess. And he argues to conclusion which are the fruit of human reason. What? Philosophy and the other human sciences rely solely on the natural right of reason. Okay. The philosopher use the principles which are known by human reason, and he argues to conclude them with the fruit of human reasoning. So it doesn't rely on revelation. But as I saw, we can't be sure if it doesn't rely on some sort of a revelation in form of instincts or social traditions, etc., or linguistic traditions, etc. But these things are much more explicit nowadays than they were in the day of Thomas Aquinas. So we are not blaming Thomas Aquinas, and that's not the point. And the point is not to understand Saint Thomas Aquinas anyway. The point is to understand the concepts involved. We are just using his writing or his conceptions because they're relevant to what we are talking about. So the theologian, on the other hand, so that was philosopher, it relies on human reasoning alone. Although he certainly uses his reason. There you go. How can he not use? Because even if faith is understood on the basis of reason, I assume, how can you understand the word of God without reason, for example? Or as a basic capability or capacity for understanding. So the theologian, on the other hand, although he certainly uses reason, accepts his principles on authority. What principle? What principles? The principle of his science, the basic principle of his science. So that's because, for example, I understand. So it's talking about the first principles of the science of theology. By science, I just mean the discipline. I think one important thing which we should know is what is the subject matter of theology. Because, for example, if we look at scholastic theology, contrast with Ilmul Kalam, for example. In Ilmul Kalam, we don't, and I'm talking about Ilmul Kalam as distinct from Ilmul Aqaid, because Ilmul Kalam as a discipline is very closely related to Ilmul Aqaid, but if Ilmul Kalam and theology are roughly similar sort of things, in Ilmul Kalam we don't treat the first principles as revealed, because the very purpose of Ilm al-Kalam, for example, if you look at Ghazali's definition of Ilm al-Kalam, the purpose of Ilm al-Kalam is to actually establish the truth of revelation without reference to revelation, because otherwise that's sort of circular reasoning. You would be saying that revelation is valid because revelation says so. That might be an argument for you who believes that that revelation is from God and God exists. So, but then you don't need ilmul kalam. Ilmul kalam is needed precisely to justify revelation rationally. So if you are doing justification of revelation rationally, then you can't derive your first principle from revelation, because that will involve you into some sort of circular reasoning if you do that. And circular reasoning is fallacious reasoning. So maybe a scholastic theology is not the similar sort of thing as ilmul kalam. I mean, I have some idea, but probably it would be good if next time we can get some good definition of theology, or maybe he will tell us something about it. But just remember this as we go along. Okay, so the theologian on the although he certainly uses it, we then accept his principle on authority, that is on revelation. The introduction of dialectic, we mean logic, into theology, the practice of starting from revealed premise or from revealed premise and arguing rationally to conclusion. So if the premise are revealed, what conclusion you are arriving at? That's like your purely religious science. Rational conclusion leads to the development of scholars, but does not turn theology into, since the principles, the data are accepted as. Yeah, so that's not what ilmul kalam. I mean, ilmul kalam has two aspects. One is positive and negative is to defend it. So here it seems like theology is just a defense of Christian. So I think that's why they call it apology or apologetic as well. But ilmul kalam is not apology in that sense, or apologetic in that sense. At least not the positive aspect of ilmul kalam. Because if the premises are revealed, then what are you rationally arguing for a conclusion? That's just like part of what we will call ilmul aqaid, the science of a belief system. Because let's consider this and then stop it here today. So if you're starting from premises which are revealed, and then you use rational techniques like reasoning, human reasoning, to drive conclusions. So he's saying that's his scholastic theology. But what is so that would be part of a religious discipline anyway, because Even accepting premise, you are actually using some sort of reasoning to at least understand them. Otherwise, how would you accept them? And then you reasoning to conclusion. So premises, reasoning, that's the reasoning you already use here, and conclusion. So there's nothing philosophical here at all. We use the same pattern in all religious disciplines. For example, in our tradition, in fiqh, for example, or tafsir, in any thing. So I don't understand why any of this would have anything to do with philosophy. And if it doesn't have anything to do with philosophy, then why we are comparing scholastic theology to philosophy in the first place? So that's my question here, and there is something good in going back, because we didn't discuss any of these things, or at least most of these things, in the previous reading of the same passage. Okay, so okay, let's go back. And okay, so the theologian, on the other hand, although he certainly uses his reason, except his principle ontology on faith, he received them as revealed. The introduction of dialectic, that is logic, into theology, the practice of starting from a revealed premise or from revealed premises and arguing rationally to a conclusion, leads to the development of scholastic theology. Yeah, I don't get this. But it doesn't turn philosophy into, since the principle or data are accepted as revealed. So if that is scholastic theology, then it has nothing to do with philosophy at all. And if it doesn't have any resemblance with philosophy, why we are comparing it to philosophy? Probably because of the subject matter, I guess. Subject matter in the sense that in theology you talk about God, and philosophers also talk about God. Philosophers study theology, they call it first philosophy. For example, Aristotle, purely on his own. I mean, he claims that is through reason, but how much he was influenced by his milieu, his teachers, his instincts, and maybe, he was receiving some hidden revelation for someone too. Who knows? But at least he didn't claim that. So we call it theology, but scholastic theology is basically a systematization of the religious belief system in this understanding. So in that way, that would be a bit different from Ilm al-Kalam. Not bit, a lot different, because Ilm al-Kalam has clear resemblance to philosophy, because a mutakallim, at least as Ghazali says, and I have three other sessions, few videos, if you want to have a look on Ghazali's conception of Ilm al-Kalam. And I know at least Ghazali and Razi have the similar sort of opinion. And mutakallim, before proving the existence of God, he can't rely on any revealed sources at all. So he first, when he a mutakallim, the first duty of mutakallim, according as per Ghazali and vast majority of Ashaira, at least, they say that later the Ashara anyway, including Imam Razi, they said that before you prove the existence of God, and before you prove that Muhammad is his prophet, you can't use any of the revealed premises in your argumentation, because otherwise you will commit the fallacy of circular reasoning. But this so in that sense, scholastic theology doesn't seem to be that at all. Okay, anyway, I think I have learned a bit today, so hopefully you did too.